All right, everyone. Well, hello and welcome. We're going to go ahead and get started. Hopefully, everybody else from the other room and that will make it over. If you're hearing me, you are in the new room, not the old. The old room just has a pause page at it. So I want to welcome you all to Autel's first in a series of technical training webinars we're going to do. Autel decided during these unusual times to utilize our training and technical experts to provide needed training for the automotive industry. We'll be doing one of these each month or each Thursday, I'm sorry, through April, and we're going to continue at a less often pace into May and then beyond. We're going to continue these throughout. I'd also like to thank everyone for your patience and effort with this room switch we had to do on the fly. It's great to see right now over 900 of you in this room, and that kind of attendance and response is why we had to make that last minute switch. We're happy to see that you're here, and we're very happy to know we're serving the industry and that there is this kind of interest. Now, before we get started, I want to go over a few items so that you know how to participate in today's events. One note I want to make is that I see many of our distributing partners have folks here, and you're going to find some great information during the webinar, but please understand that this is intended for the technician and shop personnel and not as a sales seminar. We're here to get information to the technicians. Secondly, and many of you have found this, on your computer screen, typically in the upper right corner, you'll see the control panel. There's an arrow to let you move it up, shrink it or make it bigger, and a question pane with a drop down that you can type questions in. We'll try and answer those at different times throughout the webinar. Myself and one of our panelists that you see on here, Matt Skundridge, will try to answer some personal ones if we can in between, and we'll pause at a couple of points for Chad to answer that. Just submit your questions in there and we'll see what we can answer. You can send them at any time, and at the very end, we'll also have a Q&A session. There's an icon with each of our cameras at the top that you can expand them, and the screen or the panel that should have the screen showing the Autel Training Academy logo. In the bottom right, you'll have two arrows so you can expand that to make that larger, and there's a bar at the top where you can shrink the webcams if you don't want to just see us on the web. So with that done, I want to introduce today's topic expert, Chad Schnitz. Chad is in charge of strategic accounts for Autel, which includes the locksmith industry. He has an automotive repair and equipment background, and that, copied with years working with security professionals, makes him the perfect presenter for today's topic. So with that, everyone, let's welcome Chad.
Mike, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Welcome from around the world. We have a lot of people on here from other countries, so thanks for joining us. If you are from outside of the US, I do want to note that most of the information I'm going to talk about today is specific to the US market. So as I go through this presentation, if something doesn't sound right, make sure you understand that this is coming from the North American perspective. And also, as we go through this presentation, there are always going to be outliers. Whenever we talk about anything that has to do with securities or keys or immobilizers, there's always going to be those outliers. So if I cover something, I'm going to cover it in a generic form as kind of an overall, but there may be some of those outliers that come across. So please keep that in mind as we go. Mike, thank you very much for the introduction. I appreciate that. And Matt, thank you very much for joining us and answering some of those personal questions. So like Mike has said, my name is Chad Schnitz. I am a national sales manager for Autel Diagnostics. I've been with Autel since about 2014. And in that time, I've been able to do a lot of great things. And one of those projects that I've been working on is the locksmith program and the locksmith tools and the key programming tools. So a little bit of background about me. For some reason, I have crazy ambitions. And one of those things is to take cars and fix them and rebuild them. And in this picture, you can see that I have two Chevy Volts down there that are in my shop, and I took two wrecked Volts and put them together to make one. If you ever decided that you wanted to challenge yourself as a technician and challenge your abilities, I highly suggest going out and buying a hybrid car and trying to figure out how to make it work. So this is kind of some of the stuff that I do on the side. Also, you'll notice that I have YouTube channels there. Flash Performance, that's my personal channel that I do all kinds of content that has to do with Autel on there also. And of course, the YouTube channel from Autel Diagnostics at Autel Tools. These are going to be great resources for you to use to be able to see and review some of this content. This is going to be a recording, so we're going to be able to present this out to you as well. If you want to go back and see anything in the future, you can do that. And we're going to go ahead and kick it off with a survey. Mike, go ahead and release that survey and go through that process with us.
So everybody, you should be seeing the poll appearing now, and I see several of you are answering. Just go ahead and click on one of those on your screen and you can participate in the poll with us.
So as you go through that process, we're going to be covering quite a few things here. We're going to cover the evolution of diagnostics through Autel. We're going to talk about filling the need in the vehicle securities, the IM 608 and 508, what are the differences? Some more icons, what is EEPROM, and Asian domestic versus European programming. So these are some of the topics that we're going to cover as soon as you get through your poll. So while you're working on that, go ahead, Mike.
Well, I was going to say, we'll just give it a few more seconds. We're at about 85% of everybody that's voted here, Chad.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you for that. So while you're finishing up on that poll, I'll go ahead and start talking about the evolution of Autel and really where Autel has come from, because no longer is Autel just a scan tool company. So we really started out in 2004 with our handheld OBD2 and diagnostic tools. In 2010, we introduced the DS708, and the DS708 was really the tool that put Autel on the map when it came to diagnostics. In 2012 was the introduction of our TPMS products. That's when we released the actual TPMS reset tools. In 2013, we introduced the Android-based diagnostic tools, and that really has revolutionized the industry. And you can see more and more people coming to those Android-based diagnostic tools. In 2014 was the introduction of our TPMS sensors and the Autel MX1 sensor. And in 2017, we introduced the first ADAS product to the aftermarket, and it has been a huge success ever since. And in 2018 is when we partnered with a company called RO to start building locksmith tools. The reason I bring up a lot of these is because Mike had mentioned we're doing more and more webinars throughout the month on every Thursday. So we have webinars coming up for our TPMS products, as well as our ADAS products and our heavy duty products. So make sure you stay tuned, check those out, and sign up for the Autel webbing email list, and that way you can keep up with everything that's coming out. So Mike, can you give us the results of our first poll?
You bet, Chad. So we can see here, over 75% of you own at least one Autel tool or even a couple. Quite a few of you, about 20%, have 3 to 5. 2% have 6 to 8, and there are actually folks on board that have 9 to 12 and over a dozen of the Autel scanners. Folks, we thank you and hope they've been great tools for you in that time.
And one of the reasons that we wanted to bring that up and just to talk about that is because we know that Autel is not the only tool that you have in your arsenal. And trying to figure out what is the right tool, and is there a perfect tool in the industry? So as we go through this process, I want to tell you that there is no one tool that does everything. Let's think about the automotive industry and the perfect car. If you were to describe and think about what is the perfect car for everyone, it has to be something really that gets good gas mileage, right? Because we have a lot of commuters, so something with a little bit smaller engine, but we don't want something that is super slow. So I would say maybe even a turbocharged engine. We think about the different climates that we live in. Some people need to have 4-wheel drive because it snows a lot in their area. Me personally, I need to be able to bring on my family. So I need to have something with 4 doors and being able to fit a total of 5 people. And then there's people that need to be able to haul stuff. You need to be able to bring stuff with you. So if you think about this and we put all those things together, what is the car in the industry? And the answer to that, the perfect car in the industry, is the Subaru Baja. Yes, that's right, I said it, the Subaru Baja. Think about that. It checks every one of those boxes. It gives us the ability to haul stuff because it has a truck bed. It gives us 4 doors so we can put people in and out of that vehicle. And it gives us a turbocharged engine with 4-wheel drive. So the Subaru Baja is the perfect car for everyone. So that means when I look outside, everyone's going to be driving a Subaru Baja, right? No, not right. And the reason being is because everybody needs something different. Everybody has a different desire, and a one-size-fits-all car really didn't satisfy the market. And really, that's kind of what the same thing we see when it comes to scan tools. Get scan tools now in the industry. Even Autel offers multiple different lines of scan tools. And I'm going to tie this all together, so stick with me here on this. Whenever we look at the lay of the land on the Autel tools, there's really three specialty tools. We have the Autel ADAS tool, which is specific for our advanced driver assistance systems. We have the CV tools, including the 906 and the 908 CV. Those give us the ability to do heavy duty vehicles, our 1-ton trucks and up to trucks, buses, semis, fire trucks, and all those things. So those are specialty tools in the market. Those aren't going to be for everyone. But we also have professional tools in the market. And those professional tools include the 906 BT and the 906 TS that gives us the ability to add TPMS. We have the 908S and the 908S Pro. We also have the MaxiSys Elite. So we have 5 tools in there to be able to fit every one of those gaps. And the reason I bring this up is because I get that question all the time. What's the one tool that can do it all? What's the one tool that can do heavy duty and diagnostics and key programming and be able to run a scope, and I want to run my shop management system? But that tool doesn't exist, because that tool would be so expensive and so few people would buy that everything tool, that we've decided to break that down. We've decided to break that down into multiple different tools. So if you're the guy thinking, hey, I want a tool that does it all, I'm sorry, I apologize. There's really no such thing in the industry. But what Autel has done is given us the different options and the different price points to be able to fill the need that you have at this time. And when we talk about filling the need, one of the needs and one of the questions that we've always gotten in the industry, especially when it comes to diagnostic tools, is, yeah, but can it do keys? And the answer to that has always been yes, no, kind of, sort of, not really, and maybe, all at the same time. And the reason is because the MaxiSys tools that we've sold for many years can do some keys, but it really stops when it comes to being able to do high security keys or being able to pull pins. And that's really where that yes, no, maybe kind of resides. So we have this unique need in the industry for being able to program keys back to a car, whether it be in the locksmith industry or whether it be in the automotive repair industry. There's a need that has come about to be able to program those keys. And immobilizers, really, they're not new to the industry. This started back in 1919. So think about the cars that we had back in 1919 and what kind of vehicles they were. You don't think of them as having a key to be able to start that car. So even back in 1919, when immobilizers were patented, it was a dip switch setup. So they had a 4 or 5 switch setup. So you had to know the right order, up, up, down, down, to be able to start that car. So immobilizers are not new by any means in the industry. And actually, they've been mandated in Germany, UK, and Finland since 1998. Whenever you think about smart keys or proximity keys, which are the keys that we use to start our cars without actually having to put a key in the slot and turn it, those were developed back in 19, not new technology, and actually implemented in some Mercedes-Benz models as far back as 1998. So there was a study in the Economic Journal back in 2016 that found that installing immobilizers in cars lowered the theft rate by 40% over just a short year span from 95 to 2008. So that's a pretty huge and dramatic change. So think about this. Not every market is going to be the same. My European viewers or my South American viewers, yours are going to be different than what we have even in the continental US. Even the vehicles from Canada to the vehicles in the US, there's going to be a difference there, because Canada mandates that all vehicles have a immobilizer, where in the US, we have even new vehicles coming out that may not have an immobilizer as we think of it today. So each region is going to be different, and we address that in the tool, and I'll show you that as we move through. So how does this affect you, or how does this affect your customer? Because whenever we're talking with our customers in a shop, this is going to affect the key, and now you have no way to get that car started, or it's been sitting in your lot for so long that you have no idea where the keys are. If you need to add a new key to it, say for example on a Ford, if you have to do programming on that vehicle, it requires you to have 2 keys. And if you don't have 2 keys, you can't restart this vehicle. So if you have to add new keys, or if you do module replacement, J2534 programming, or something as simple as a steering column replacement on some vehicles, is we're going to require us to have an ability to be able to program keys to those vehicles. So how have we done it in the past? How have we done it before Autel provided a solution? Well, we had to have multiple different tools to be able to do that. We had to have a tool that could do key programming via OBD2. We wanted to be able to do it as simple as we possibly could. I have a friend that does locksmithing in Australia, and over 80% of the vehicles that he has to do, he cannot do them via OBD2. So whenever we started developing tools, we went to the locksmith industry and we said, hey, what do you need? What is the best all-around tool to be able to do what you need to do? And that included the ability to do key programming via the OBD2. We also have to have the ability to do in-circuit and out-of-circuit. Like I was telling you, my friend in Australia, they actually have to do EEPROM work, which means basically connecting directly to that circuit or soldering into that board to be able to access the key information. Being so many different parts of the world, we had to add that to the tool to be able to offer that EEPROM information. We have to have the ability to do J2534 programming, because on some vehicles we have to have a PIN number that we purchased from the dealer, or we need to be able to program a new module back to that vehicle. So we had to have the ability to do J2534 programming. And we've also seen in the locksmith industry the need to be able to do diagnostics. And there are so many systems that are tied all together inside these vehicles that we need to be able to see a whole system scan before we do any of the key programming or immobilizer functionality on these vehicles. I've been working on a Sprinter project, and we found out that Sprinter has immobilizer functions in 6 different modules in the Sprinter vans. That includes the transmission control module. So congratulations, you just replaced the transmission control module in a Sprinter, and now you need to program keys for it. So we have to have all these different pieces to be able to do key programming. But look at all these tools that we had to have in the past, and what kind of expense does that generate? Well, if we look at the price point on all these tools and we add those all up, we come up to over $8,500 just to be able to get into the key programming industry. And that's a lot to swallow when you're talking about being able to program keys. Maybe if we're just doing it 1 or 2 or 3 a month, that's a lot of expense. So Autel took all that information, we put it all together and figured out, okay, how can we develop a tool to be able to add all these features and benefits that a customer is going to need to be able to do key programming, but maybe even do more? How do we add the diagnostics functions to it as well? So the Autel solution to that is the IM508 and the IM608. These 2 tools are dedicated key programming tools. So these are the 2 offerings that we have brought to the market that we've been working on for the past couple of years. So these are relatively new, but they are growing very, very fast, and our coverage has become pretty substantial to be able to meet the majority of the cars in the industry. We're going to start out talking about the IM508. So the IM508 gives us the ability to not only program keys, but gives us basic diagnostic functionality. So the IM508 is based on the MX808 chassis. The MX808 chassis gives us the ability to read and clear codes in all modules and gives us some service functions. So it gives us oil life reset, electronic parking brakes, DPF regen, and some more. So it gives us more and more functions to be able to do some of that basic information. But we add all the key programming information to that as well. So I can turn off my webcam. That way I can save my bandwidth. I've been told that my audio is cutting in and out a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off just to try and save some of that bandwidth. So on the IM508, we have the ability to program Asian and domestic vehicles. And remember that when you're looking at the IM508, it is really dedicated to Asian and domestic vehicles. We added a smart guide mode. This mode gives us the ability to guide you as the customer through this process. So you as the end user, we're going to give you that step-by-step guide, walk you through that process on how to program keys, because a lot of times this is going to be new to many of us on this webinar. We also have the expert mode. So if you are an expert in these systems and you know the system exactly and what you're working on, this gives you the ability to go right into expert mode and get that system completed quick and dirty. We also have the ability to do key generation, key learning, and remote learning. Remote learning is going to be the lock and unlock on the key fob. So if that's not built into your key, we can add that once we do the Immobilizer functionality. These next three on the side of the screen, you're going to see Immobilizer ECU adaptation, Immobilizer coding, refreshing, backup, and restore. These are all actually going to be kind of on the same line. These give us the ability to reset and clear out the keys in that Immobilizer. So let's say that Mike loses his man purse, and inside his man purse are all of his keys and all of his identification. So everybody now knows where he lives, and they have the keys to his car. With this functionality, we can erase all those keys out of that vehicle. So we can reset that Immobilizer, erase all the keys, program keys back to the vehicle, and now we're good to go. This is also really prevalent when we're talking about repo lot. So if we're repoing cars, backup and restore modules, we can do key read and write and basic EEPROM information. Well, what is EEPROM? If we look at that, EEPROM stands for electronically erasable, programmable, read-only memory. And basically what that means is there's an engineer out there that never took a stinking English class, because that's a whole bunch of oxymorons all at the same time. Electronically erasable, programmable, read-only memory. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but basically that is what EEPROM is, and we'll go to what is EEPROM and how do you use it. So the IM508 does have basic EEPROM functionality. So what's included in the kit? Included in the kit in the IM508, of course, you have your Android tablet and power supply. That's going to be based on the MX808 chassis like we had mentioned. You get the XP200. The XP200 is this blue box down here at the bottom. That gives us the ability to read and write keys. So that's our key learning device. We also have connectors, which are not really going to be used too much in North America, but maybe in other parts of the world, depending on the vehicle that you're working on, along with our EEPROM boards and our clips to be able to do in-circuit and out-of-circuit key programming and diagnostics. So you may be thinking to yourself, is this the right tool for me? Well, this tool, remember, does have limited diagnostics. So if you're looking for full diagnostics, this probably is not the right tool for you. But also, we need to remember that this is based and focused on Asian and domestic vehicles. So if you are a Euro shop, this is probably not the right tool for you as well. So if you're a non-Euro shop and you're not looking for the diagnostics, you're just looking for the key programming functionality, this may be the right tool for you. Or if you're a customer that already owns a professional level diagnostic tool. In this example, I'm using the MaxiSys Elite. If you already own a MaxiSys Elite, the IM508 is the perfect addition to your scan tool arsenal, because you already have all the diagnostic capabilities of an Elite. You already have the J-Box and all those functionalities. So the IM508 is a perfect addition to your current scan tool arsenal. So our next step is going to be the IM608. The IM608 is the big brother to the IM508. And as we go through this process, make sure if you have any questions, put them in the question box so Mike can answer those for you. So as we get into the IM608, the IM608 is based on the MS908S chassis. So that means we have complete diagnostics. We have Asian, domestic, and European coverage in that tool. We're going to be able to do active tests and special functions, bidirectional controls. We're going to be able to roll the windows up and down, honk the horn, make the wipers go back and forth. If the computer can control it, we can control it. So you have all the bidirectional controls in this tool. We also have the ability to do VIN writes, module syncs, coding, initialization, and much, much more. So a complete diagnostic tool. We also have all of the same key programming functionality that we just talked about in the IM508 for your Asian and domestics. Now we add the European coverage. We give you the ability to do Mercedes-Benz, all keys lost, to be able to add keys, to be able to do BMW, FEM, BDC, CAS 1, 2, 3, 3++, and 4. So all of the CAS systems. Volkswagen MQB, other Volkswagen and Audi versions. Being able to do encryption on certain chips, being able to do IC card read and write, remote frequency detection, and infrared keys on Mercedes. Think about all the European coverage we just added and so much more. But these are the keys that I get asked questions a lot. Can I do these keys? And with the IM608 on those European vehicles, the answer to that is yes. Now on the IM608, what comes in the kit? Well, you're going to get the Android tablet, and the power supply, of course, is going to be included in that. But we also get the XP400. The XP400 is the secret sauce, is the way I call it, to the key programming system. So the XP400 is this device here on the right-hand side, and that is where we can do our read and write of the keys. So we put the key into that slot to be able to give us the ability to read and write those keys and to be able to do all of those Immobilizer EEPROM functionality. So we're going to take a break here and we're going to take a poll again. We want to know, how many vehicles do you normally scan in a week? What kind of vehicles, how many total are you seeing? So Mike, if you could throw that poll up there for us.
And should be on the screen. Looks like they're starting to answer already. And while we're at it here, Chad, as they're answering up the polls, a few questions and things that have come up, some different ones. One of the customer was asking, does the 608, these questions pop off so quick. Says, I'm owning an IM608 program and I've done a few adding and all keys lost on Mercedes 06 and up. I was told Autel key programming customer service that it does not do older Mercedes car 2005 and lower. Is that true?
That is true. So when we engineered this tool, we really focused on the most popular ones. So we focused primarily on newer than 2006. So these tools are going to be focused primarily on newer vehicles and the most common vehicles. So at this time, we do not have the older generation Mercedes coverage that you're asking about, but that may be something we'll add later on as we get caught up in the engineering process. Right now, we're focused on keeping those 2006 and newer cars, plus also adding the brand new stuff, the 19s and 20s.
All right, trying to look through some more questions here. Somebody was asking how the diagnostics compares to the 906 TS on that IM608 that's based on the MaxiSys, the MS908S chassis. So that diagnostic capability is the same for both of those.
Absolutely. So the IM608, as far as diagnostics goes, is going to be equal to a 906 BT, 906 TS diagnostic side, 908, 908S.
And somebody wanted to know, as we're confusing things here, Chad, they want to know if they can add the XP400 to their MaxiSys Elite to make it like an IM608.
So remember, as we talked about the one size fits all tool or one size fits all car, we have really made that distinction between the key programming tools and the locksmith or key diagnostic tools. So no, you cannot add the XP400 to your Elite. To be able to do that, you would have to purchase the IM508, and then you could add the XP400 to that to be able to do all of your keys and all of your extra functions.
All righty, so we got the poll pretty well closed up, Chad, if you want to share the results from it.
Yes, absolutely. Please do.
So as we can see, about 40% of you are scanning up to 10 vehicles a week, and a quarter of you are running between 11 and 20. And you can see the rest of the numbers up there. There's even a group of you doing over 40 cars a week in scanning. So quite a few of you have a need for a scan tool as well as for the key reprogrammer.
Absolutely. And think about these tools as being an additional tool to your arsenal. So you can use the IM508 to do pre-scans and post-scans if need be. We're going to go ahead and jump into the diagnostics piece of the Autel IM608. This is going to be specific to the 608, but it does have a lot of the same features when we're talking about the IM508. So whenever we select the diagnostics button on the IM608, there's going to be a few things that are going to be just a little bit different. We're still going to have the ability to scan the car wirelessly with the J-box attached to the vehicle and then Bluetooth wireless to the tool. We still have the ability to do our VIN scan and do our auto detect. Whenever we do the auto detect, it's going to go through the same process as our MaxiSys tools. It's going to scan that VIN information, pull as much information out as it can. So it's going to give us the year, make, model, engine, and pull all the data that it can get directly from that vehicle. Where it really changes on the IM608 is we do have a little bit different platform or layout. We've enhanced the layout of the tool to make it a little more friendly, as people have been asking for that. So when we look at the IM608 and we're looking at the live data, you'll notice that we have split that information into two separate columns instead of having them all stacked on top of each other. Now you have the ability to see two columns side by side to be able to see more information on that tool and to give us a little bit more size whenever we're looking at that number. We also changed the way we can display on those individual PIDs. We give you the ability to put graphs, we give you the ability to put a gauge dial, also the ability to do a bar graph, and we've added color to that just to show you a little bit more intuitive as we're working through that process. On the MaxiSys tools, one of the things that always was a question is how many graphs can I merge all at one time? And the answer on the MaxiSys tools was always that you could only do 3. So on the IM608, we can now do 4 at one time. So now this gives us the ability to do 4 PIDs at one time, so you can do all 4 wheel speed sensors on that if you wanted to. We're going to go ahead and jump forward, and we're going to jump into the Immobilizer button. So the Immobilizer button is really where we start seeing the difference when it comes to the tools between your normal MaxiSys tool and your new IM series of tools. You're going to see 2 new buttons. You're going to see Immobilizer, which is our orange button, and you're going to see Programming, which is our blue button. So we're going to go into Immobilizer first. Now, whenever we look at the Immobilizer button, I'm going to give you a word of caution. A word of caution on actually anything that has to do with key programming. And this actually came about from a tech support call that we received whenever we launched these tools. The tech support call came in saying, hey, I have a Toyota and I'm trying to program keys to it, and now I can't program a key and your tool's broken. So asking some more questions, we asked the customer, did you program a master key or make a master key before you erased all keys in this Toyota? And of course, the answer to that was no. Favorite question when I'm talking to customers about these tools is, did you read the instructions? Because we put all that information directly in the tool for you to go through, so you have all the information you can. Because the IM series of tools, they are a your car don't start no more kind of tool. With the MaxiSys tool, you could always just push escape and get back out and it was okay. With the Immobilizer tools and the IM tools, we do have the ability to clear all those keys out and make the car not start anymore. So When we're talking about these tools, you do have the ability to clear all the keys. On some manufacturers, you may require to have a master key. So make sure you're reading the information before you go too far. Don't throw this tool in the hands of your brand new tech that has never done anything like this. So just keep that in mind. So we're going to go through the Immobilizer icon and what does it mean and what do we get whenever we go into the Immobilizer icon. So under the Immobilizer icon or EMO, we're going to get our OBD2 Learn information. This is where we're going to be able to do our smart mode, which is our guided mode, but it also will self-identify the car. It gives us the ability to not have to figure out what system it has. The tool will do the work for us. We have the manual selection, which basically means I know the car, I'm going to manually select it and not auto-VIN. System selection is based with that smart mode. ECU renew, Immobilizer box reset, doing all keys lost or clearing keys. It's going to tell us the number of keys, and we're going to be able to learn new ECUs. And I'm going to cover that here, especially when we're talking about Chrysler. Whenever we go into that Immobilizer screen, this is the screen you're going to see. I'm actually in my Toyota 4Runner on this screen. So we can go through and we can look, you can see the learn key, clear keys, immobilizers, and all that information. But if we look here in the bottom right corner, you're going to see a button that says Operate Guide. Now remember when I said that we have all the step-by-step information built into the tool. This button is not heavy. Don't be scared to push the button, because that Operate Guide is going to give us a tremendous amount of information whenever we're learning how to do these key programming functionalities. So make sure you use that Operate Guide. You're going to see in this Operate Guide, it's going to tell us definitions of all the vehicles information as far as what we saw on that screen before. What do those buttons do? Key learn, clear key, number of keys, immobilizer, box reset. It's going to give us those definitions. But look right here at the bottom where it says precautions. It says on this Toyota, a learned master key is required for performing the immobilizer resets. So we give you all those precautions on that screen. We also, if you scroll down a little bit on that screen, we're going to give you information about that vehicle. We're going to give you information about what you need to know. For example, on this Toyota, we're going to give you the chip number, which is a 13. We're going to give you the key frequency, because when we order keys, we need to know that information. We're going to tell you what kind of key it is, whether it's a blade key, a fobic key, or a proximity key. We're also going to tell you how many keys you can have maximum in this vehicle. And that becomes very important when we're talking about different styles of vehicle, because on this Toyota, we can have 10 keys. But on an example of a Hyundai or Kia, you can only have 4. So if you're trying to program new keys to this vehicle and you're not being successful at it, that may be the reason. Check and see how many keys are already programmed to the vehicle. Make sure that you don't have too many keys in there or that you have met your limit. If we scroll up again, you're also going to see what that key looks like. So we can make sure that we are in the right system, that the tool identified the right system, and we know what key we're going to be programming to that vehicle. It's going to give us a picture of that. So that was my Asian and domestic example. Now, if we look at and contrast that to, let's say, our European examples, we're going to go into a BMW. So when we go into BMW, this specific vehicle is a CAS 4 system, and it has that same button down there in the corner. It's going to offer us the button that says Operate Guide. We select that Operate Guide button, we're going to be able to see that same information. It's going to give us the introduction. It's going to tell us what the buttons on the previous screen mean, and it's going to go through some of those definitions. If we keep going and we scroll that up, on this BMW, it tells us the sync operation for this vehicle. To sync the ELV, we may need to synchronize the CAS and the ELV, run this function when the steering wheel lock is faulty. Sometimes the vehicle cannot be started because the OBD2 can add a key. So it tells us, hey, these are the things that we're going to have to do. Are you prepared to do this? Do you understand these systems? Because if the synchronizing does not work, we may have to sync the DME. So we give you all that information right away to give you a heads up on what is coming. As we scroll down farther, you're also going to see that we give you a picture of what that module in that vehicle looks like. Now, why in the world would we give you a picture of what the module looks like, and why would we give you a picture of where that module is located? Well, because on some of these vehicles, we may have to remove that module to be able to do that EEPROM operation that we were talking about earlier. So if we see anything on the operate guide that says EEPROM operation, or we see anything on there that says dump, that is a clear indication that we will be removing a module and we will be connecting directly to that module via EEPROM. So here is why it's important to know that location, because we're going to read the EEPROM chip data. In this tool, we're going to give you the ability to see where the module is, what the module looks like, and then we're going to give you a picture of where that specific connection needs to be made, whether it is a connection directly to a chip or whether it is a connection via soldering to that board. And again, this is going to be specifically towards the European vehicles. So keep that in mind as we go through this process. So here's an example of what the chip looked like on the board and where it is located. This is another example from a different vehicle. This is also a BMW, but this is on a different module. So we give you that information. We give you pretty clear pictures and more information about that if you want to get into that process. So what is EEPROM and how does it really affect you? Well, EEPROM, like we talked about before, is an English major's nightmare because it's electronically erasable, programmable, read-only memory. It is a read-only memory whose contents can be erased and reprogrammed using different pulses and voltages. It's kind of our, think of it as the back door to being able to do key programming if we can't do it through the OBD2 port. So there's a couple of different variations and ways that we can do this. We can do it in circuit and we can do it out of circuit. So when we talk about in circuit, excuse me right there, I had a little bit of a cough. If we're talking about in circuit, it's the preferred method to be able to do read and write. We don't really have to be intrusive to a circuit board. It does not require the removal of the component from the board, but there's lots of different ways that we can do it. We can do it via the chip clip that comes in the box, a pogo, or we may need to solder to the board. So if you're going to be doing these type of components, make sure that you are very comfortable soldering. The other option is to be able to do out of circuit. And we need some vehicles and models, we need to isolate that chip because we're applying power to that chip. And if we're applying power to that chip, it potentially could excite the rest of the board, and then the rest of the chips start talking, and we can corrupt the information that we're trying to pull from that component. So this does require the removal of the chip on some specific vehicles and components. The tools to be able to do that, to be able to do an out of circuit, would require a hot air gun, a soldering iron, a copper wick, cleaners, and solvents. So keep that in mind, again, if you're trying to get into this side of the industry being able to do programming on European vehicles. So to be able to do all that, remember I said the IM508 is limited on what it can do via EEPROM. And I talked about the secret sauce. The secret sauce to be able to do the EEPROM world and the European cars is the XP400. The XP400 comes included with the IM608, or it can be added to the IM508. This is what gives us the ability to do our Mercedes infrared keys, to be able to do our keys and chips, to be able to do all our EEPROM. So you'll notice the components that are included in here. We have a lot of different wires, components. These pin into the module or computer directly. The next one gives us the ability to solder in. We have our chip clip there on the right. These circuit boards, or if we have to remove a chip or component from the board, we can solder those to this board and then give us the ability to read those in the XP400. This one in the bottom right corner, that's actually our sniffer for Mercedes-Benz infrared keys. That's what we put into the EIS or the ignition module. on that vehicle to be able to sniff the information directly out of the car. So all these components are included with the IM608, or if you buy the XP400 separately, this is what comes in that box. So when we look at the XP400, here are the different components inside the XP400 and what it does. This is really what gives us the ability to read all these chips and, like I said, do the EEPROM information. You'll notice here that that is the Mercedes-Benz infrared key slot right there in the center, transponder slot. If we have a little pill inside our key, that gives us the ability to read those. Right here is where we stick our key. You'll notice a hole that gives us the ability to stick the key blade through that device to be able to read it as confidently as possible. You'll notice also that there's a ring, that is the exciter ring. That is what gives us the ability to read the key and excite the key to be able to read the information off of it. Now the IC card area, if you're not familiar with an IC card, that's basically looks like a credit card, and that is your key. That gives us the ability to not have a proximity key. It's basically a credit card that you can put in your wallet or in your purse, or in Mike's case, in his man purse. So you can see there's lots of different components to this tool. Now, one of the things that I want to point out about this XP400, and really this is a secret in the industry, and this box, I really don't know if I should tell you this, but this box is made with magic smoke inside. And that magic smoke is put in the engineering. Our engineering team is phenomenal, and they build this box with magic smoke inside. And that magic smoke is what makes everything go and makes everything operate. However, if you were to connect this device incorrectly to the car, you will let the magic smoke out of the box. And when you let the magic smoke out of the box, you cannot put the magic smoke back into the box. So in this image here, you'll see that it is incorrect to connect the XP400 directly to the car. We never want to do that. When you do that, it puts 12 volts where 12 volts ain't supposed to be. So our engineers are phenomenal people. And one of the minor details that they didn't think about is that people could connect this OBD2 port that normally connects to our J2534 device. They can connect it to the XP400. Unfortunately, when you do that, like I said, you let the magic smoke to the box. So whenever you are new to this tool, whenever you are getting it out, whenever you're using it, please make sure you read the instructions inside the box and connect it properly. I had a good friend of mine that bought one of these tools, and he called me up and said, hey, my coworker can't get the tool to connect to a car. I said, well, what do you mean? Did you plug the blue box into the car? He said, yeah, I sure did. And so I was asking him questions. He goes, man, this box smells burnt. And I knew immediately what happened is they connected the XP400 directly to the car instead of using the OBD2 to connect to the J2534 device. So again, my question to you is, did you read the instructions? And the answer to that, unfortunately, usually is no. So I will cover that again. Do never, ever, never connect the XP400 directly to the vehicle. And it does say accessories only on the side of that box. So the connection for the XP400. The XP400 is connected directly to the tablet and is only connected to the tablet via the USB. Never connect the XP400 to the vehicle. Here you can see that I have an FEM module, and I am connecting to that FEM module with my chip clip. That is an 8-prong clip, and that is able to connect directly to that chip. We connect it to the chip, and then we connect that ribbon cable to the XP400. So this is how we would do an EEPROM on this BMW. And then we simply follow the screen instructions. We follow the screen instructions, and it takes us step by step through that process to be able to do this FEM module on a BMW. Now, unfortunately, not every vehicle we're able to clip onto that chip. On this example, this is another module. I think this one as well is from a BMW. And you'll notice that we highlight where we need to solder to that board. So we will give you the information to be able to solder directly to that board, and we tell you what connector to use whenever you want to do soldering to that board. And at this time, I'm going to go ahead and take a pause. Mike, do we have any questions that have come through up to this point?
Yeah, we got quite a few, Chad. I flagged a few of them that we thought would be good ones to try and answer. Let me scroll up through the list here. kind of hit them. One question was, if I have an IM 508, what do I need to be included so that I'm able to do Mercedes and Volkswagen Audi Group?
Just part number XP400, and that gives you that box and all the accessories that we talked about. The software is already in the IM508, and whenever you plug that box in, it will activate everything. It'll turn it all live. So the XP400 is the device that you need to purchase to be able to add to your IM508 to be able to do that European coverage like Mercedes infrared keys.
Another guy, and this is one that's probably going to get covered some later, Chad, but a good question. Says, I understand most of the 2015 and newer Ford vehicles, you need to be part of NASDF for security registry. Do you need this? Do you not need this subscription with his tools for doing those modules?
Great question. And yes, I will cover that here a bit at the end of the presentations. So what you're talking about is LSID cars or VSP vehicles from Ford. And basically what that means is if a module is programmed in that vehicle, for instance, a body control module, you now have to program the keys back to that car. You have to relay MS sensors. And that requires a code from Ford to be able to do that programming and program those keys. We've been in conversations a lot with NASDF to make sure that our tools are compliant in meeting all of the NASDF standards and that we're not breaking any rules in the industry. And our conversation with NASDF has come to the point where it said, look, as long as you're pulling the information directly from the vehicle, you are able to program that information back into the vehicle. So example on Chryslers, we're able to pull the pin directly from the vehicle without an outside source. But we need to be able to use that PIN number to program it back in. Now, pointing that out, the tool will not be able to program that module or do the parameter reset. You will still need your LSID to do that. But as far as the keys and function itself, we can do that via the tool without an LSID. So there's a little bit of overlap there. And we'll get into the part where I talk about it is highly recommended to have a VSP or an LSID. So any other questions, Mike?
Yeah, here's one, and we kind of covered it, but I want to help clear it for everybody. I currently have the 508 and an XP400. Usage is primarily for Immobilizer, and I work on European cars. With that said, is the 508 equal to the 608, or does the 608 do more in the Immobilizer compared to the 508 once I've added an XP400?
Absolutely. Whenever you add the XP400 to an IM508, when it comes to key programming, the two tools will become exactly the same. They will have the same features, functions, benefits, and operation whenever you add the XP400 between the two tools. Absolutely.
And then here's one from earlier when you were talking about master versus slave keys that I'm sure some are asking. They asked, what is a master key and how do you know if you have one?
The answer to that is read the instructions built into the tool, read that guided information. I'm going to have you go ahead and forward that question to Matt, and Matt can answer that one specifically for that customer. Master keys are really used on Toyota. It's kind of their one of their security steps, but Matt can answer that more in depth for you.
And then one other one up here, Chad, that I know you and I have talked about. Will the 508 pull the pin from all the cars?
I'm going to answer that yes, no, maybe, kind of, sort of, and not really. Because you put the word all in that question, I'm going to say no, because it will not cover all, every, each. Majority, yes. So most of the time that question is pointed towards Chrysler, and I'm going to cover that specifically as we get through this. But Chrysler pins, yes. Ford pins, GMs, yes. Nissan 20-digit, yes. So we're able to cover the majority of the vehicles pulling those pins directly from it. An example of no, not yet, is Nissan 22-digit. We're not able to pull that pin yet. So all, no. Majority, yes.
And of course, you kind of covered this, but just to ease some people's concerns, there's a few asking if they need to have that LSID license or vehicle security professional license in order to buy the tools.
Do you have to have an LSID or a VSP? The answer to that is no. Does Autel highly recommend it? Yes. You do not have to have an LSID to buy the tool. Was the main point.
Oop, I think we lost your audio for a second there, Chad.
Can you hear me okay? Am I back with you?
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, one of the things that we're going to see a lot of and use this tool a lot for is to test our keys, to test to make sure that our keys are working. And whenever we're testing keys, a lot of times we need to be able to test the proximity key to make sure that it is working properly with our securities in our tool. So the way to test a key on the IM508 or the IM608 is to use the key programmer device plugged in via USB. We can connect that directly to the tool, and we can place the key inside that slot. Whenever we place the key inside that slot, we're going to select the blue icon, which is programmer or programming. So whenever we do that, we can go into the selection of key, read, and write. That gives us the ability to learn more information about that key. So we select key, read, and write, and then we're going to select automatic detection. Whenever we select automatic detection, you can see on the screen that there's a lot of options for keys: high tag 2, high tag 3, high tag pro, MegaMost 48, and more. That screen slides. So there's a lot of options out there. So when we do automatic detection, this will work on everything but a Mercedes-Benz infrared key. There's a specific option for that, but we can select automatic detection to be able to see what our key is. If we select that and we get information back, for instance, this key comes back as a high tag pro. If we get information back, we know that that key is transmitting information. We know that that key has information in it and that it is transmitting it. Now, the next question is going to be, has that key been programmed? Or did that ding dong customer of yours just buy a key off of Amazon and give it to you and say, I don't know, my key don't work? So this gives us the ability to then check to see if that key has information in it or if it has been programmed. We can select OK, and then we can go to read key information. Whenever we read key information, this is going to take the information directly out of that key, and it's going to give us the binary code out of that key. And whenever we get this binary information out of the key, it's going to be absolutely overwhelming. If we get a whole bunch of F's and zeros, we know that that key has never been programmed, that there's no information in it. Because when we look at this image, if we look up in the top left corner, that is actually our key string. That 4A86D536, that is the information that we need to know. So by reading key information, we can make sure and see the binary information on the back side of that key to make sure that it has actually been programmed. If you're just looking to see the key ID, we can do that as well. You can just go back and select read key ID, and it will take all that mess off your screen. It will only show you the key ID readout so you know what that key information is. That can be used whenever we're looking at diagnosing. I have a good key and it says the key is working, but I still have a no start. This has happened to me multiple times when a customer has dropped off a car and they left me their spare key. And they drove the car there, so I know it runs, but I use their spare key and it doesn't work. We can use this key ID in the diagnostic side of our tablet to go in and see all the key IDs that have been programmed to this car to make sure that they match. If it doesn't match, maybe they gave me the wrong key. Maybe your customer owns multiple BMWs that are all the same and all the same color because they're weird, and they got you the wrong key. So this gives us the ability to read the key and to get the information out of that key. So we have covered a lot of information just based on the IM508 and the IM608. Mike, can you go ahead and introduce our next survey?
You bet, Chad. Let me get it up here and going. I was typing some question answers there. There we go. So we got it up there and going for you, Chad.
So the question really is, so how do you feel about the tool so far? Is it something that you go, man, this is easy breezy? Or did I just scare the snot out of you and you say, holy cow, I want nothing to do with programming keys. I will leave that to the locksmith industry. And either way, it's fine. So let's see what you guys are thinking so far.
So it looks like we got about half of them in on a vote, Chad. Give them a couple of more minutes here. We've been just a minute in. Give you all about 15 more seconds, 20 more seconds to answer.
So while you're doing that, at the end of this presentation, we're going to have a GoFundMe page to get Chad a better internet connection. So I do apologize for dropping out every once in a while, doing the best I can with being out here in the middle of nowhere.
You bet. One of the other things too I wanted to mention while we're letting that poll finish running, it's getting pretty close there. If you look down on your control panel, you'll notice there's a handouts section, and there are 3 handouts there that will give you some information on the tool offerings and also a display on what Chad was talking about with connecting the XP400 to the tool to help you in connecting that and making that work sure. So that should help for some of the questions coming up. Looks like we got about 3/4 of you answered. I'm going to go ahead and close that poll out and let's see what those results look like. And it looks great. Only 10% of you feel like we shot way over the head. A lot of you want to learn more and more information. We've seen some questions around that. And in future ones, we'll get into more with doing some specific vehicles live and on the way. And then, of course, a portion that have experience but didn't realize that it could be quite as easy with the way this tool is going to guide and help us through.
Awesome, and thank you very much for answering those polls. It really helps us to make sure we know what to build on next. What kind of presentation do you want next? So thank you very much for that, and I'm happy to see that only 10% this is way over your head. And you know, when I do this presentation, sometimes I get that. You get it where you feel like this guy from Shark Tank, where he says, "Great pitch, amazing product, I'm out," and that's okay. But as we progress with this tool and as we make this tool better and better and we add more and more features to it, we're going to add more and more help to it as well to give you guys the ability to do that process if you want to or if you need to. So here's the solution. Autel is really focused on providing that solution for you as a locksmith, as a technician, as a tow truck driver, or as a repo yard. We want to be able to give you that, that option if you want to do it. So just to give you some stats and to calm your nerves just a little bit, over 85% of the vehicles in the US are programmed via OBD2. So thanks to our laws set forth by our wonderful wisdom and our leaders in government, no sarcasm there whatsoever, thanks to the laws that we have in place, most of the vehicles can be done via OBD2. So it really eases us up on the EEPROM side. Mainly Euro vehicles will require EEPROM, and we are adding more and more of the formerly EEPROM only vehicles. We're adding more and more of those via OBD2. Whenever we look at the domestics and Asian vehicles that required some EEPROM information, that was really like the Toyota Sequoia, like 2007, and the Chrysler Pacifica security models, which was 2004 to 2007, a little bit of a year range there. Those are the ones that had the Immobilizer module right under where the key is. And your options on that is to call the dealer with your LSID and try and beg them for a PIN number and use that. Or we can drill a small hole into the side of that Immobilizer, clip onto it, pull the PIN information out in about 5 to 10 minutes. So time is money in this industry. Going through your dealership and trying to get all that information and go through all those hoops and all that paperwork versus drilling a hole and taking 5 minutes to get it done, that is totally up to you. The IM tools will pull pins. That was a question we had earlier. It will store the pin and it will replace the pin. Whenever we pull a pin on a module or a vehicle, this tool will store that in the tool so we can go through that whole process without having to hold on to that or write it down on our hands. Now, what I usually do is I will take a screenshot of that pin, and that way I have it just in case, or if I have to disconnect, go to a different vehicle, I'll always have that pin information. So can we pull pins on the majority of vehicles? Absolutely. The answer is yes. If we have coverage to program keys to it, that means that we have coverage to pull the pin. We can do module resets, module syncs, all keys lost, add a key, and much, much more. I'm going to pick on Chrysler here for a little bit because we see this one a lot, and I get a lot of questions on this one, and that is on the Chrysler WIN module or the wireless ignition node. And the reason I get a lot of questions on that is because these go bad a lot in these Dodge Chrysler vehicles. So this is where we use that FOBIC key and we slide that into the Immobilizer to be able to start that vehicle. I had my neighbor call me and said, hey, I tried the truck down the road and all of a sudden it dies. And then it starts back up on its own and then it dies. We figured out that he had too much weight on his key fob and he actually ruined his WIN module. So we need to be able to replace that WIN module. So the IM series of tools will give us the ability to do that. On my neighbor's truck, he ordered one from Chrysler. We were able to go in and pull the pin information from the original module, put the new module in, program it, program the VIN, add the keys, and drive the truck away. And it only took about 30 minutes. So it was a pretty easy process, but we do give you the ability to do that. We were also able to do, relearn the keys and relearn the TPMS on that. So the tools do give us the ability to do that. And that is a pretty phenomenal piece all on its own. If you are a person that works on a lot of Chryslers, that right there is worth its money because that one pays pretty well to get that job done. So the next question is, are you the right person? Are you the right customer to own this tool? Are you the right type of shop owner to have one of these? Well, if you're already doing high-end diagnostics, absolutely. If you're doing J2534 programming, you really pretty much have to have a tool to be able to do key programming now. Even if you're replacing computers with some out of the junkyard. My friend Paul Danner had a vehicle that came into his shop that he was able to remove the computer and replace it with a junkyard unit, rewrite the VIN, and add the keys back to it. So he was able to do that all with these IM tools. If you're a dealership, a used car lot, an auto auction, a tow yard, a repo lot, and locksmiths absolutely love this tool. So it gives you a lot of power to be able to do as much as you want to do. Do you have to do everything? No, it's totally up to you. So are you ready? Are you ready to start programming keys? Well, do you have a good resource for good quality keys? To that same point, is Amazon and eBay a good place to get quality keys? I'm not going to put a survey up for that, but the answer to that is no, because there are so many keys that look exactly the same. And you could order one on Amazon that looks exactly the same for your Nissan, and it has a totally different security protocol inside that car. So make sure you have a good resource for good quality keys. If you don't have a locksmith supplier or you don't have the ability to cut keys like question 2, the best solution for you is to maybe go to a dealership and buy that key and have them cut the key, and then you can program that to the car. Do you have a battery maintainer? The reason I ask that is because on some vehicles, it's very quick to program keys, no problem. But on some vehicles, it may take a while. On some Mercedes, if you don't use some of the accessories that we offer, it could take 45 minutes to an hour of that key being on and that computer and that car working, so that could deplete the battery pretty quick. On Volvo, if you don't have an LSID and you're trying to do it through the tool, it can take anywhere from 8 minutes to 8 hours. So make sure that you have a battery maintainer, not a battery charger, a battery maintainer, or a stable power supply. Can you solder and do you feel comfortable removing modules? If the answer to that is no, make sure you stick to the Asian and domestic side. If you feel comfortable with that, jump into the European side. If you want to practice doing removing of chips, go to the junkyard and buy some modules. Go buy an old VCR and see if you can unsolder and then solder it back in and see if it still works. Do you have OE repair information source? The scan tools are going to give you a lot of information. but they're also going to give you some options. And if you don't have an OE repair source, it may make your job very challenging. When I was doing keys on my Chevy Volt, it told me to put the key in the key reader on the car, and then it said it could be above the radio, it could be in the cup holder, or it could be in the center console. But having the OE repair information, I knew exactly where it was. I could find that information. I could see how the system works if I'm having any issues. So make sure that you have OE repair information. Can you read and follow directions? I know that I just totally disqualified half your shop, and I apologize for that. But can you read and follow directions? Can you read and see that you have to have a master key before you go to the next step? Can you look at the pictures and apply those pictures to your task? Make sure that you can read and follow directions. And the last one is, do you have a vehicle security professional ID, formerly known as an LSID? And do I need to purchase one? Well, Autel's stance on this is absolutely highly recommended. If this is something you're going to be doing, you need to have a VSP. If you are doing J2534 programming and you are looking at adding keys, you need to have a vehicle security professional ID to be able to do a lot of these functionalities. As we discussed on that Volvo a little earlier, time is money. And can we program keys? Can we pull pins directly from that vehicle? Yes. Could it take up to 8 hours? Yes. And again, nobody got time for that. So this gives you the ability to use your LSID to be able to purchase that pin directly from NASTIF and be able to program that car and get it in and out in 45 minutes instead of 8 hours. Well, that really leads me directly into that next question, which is, what is an LSID or what is a VSP? For that information, I'm going to point you directly towards NASTF. NASTF is the National Automotive Service Task Force, and they have a page dedicated to getting your vehicle security's professional ID. Now, there's a couple things you need to know, and they're going to tell you this on the website. You need to be licensed and bonded. You can have a mother-child relationship, which means that the shop can have the LSID and they can add technicians to that LSID, because it's hard to have a bond or insurance on every individual technician inside the shop. So I highly recommend going to NASTF. You can see that there's a video there on how to do the process and what information you're going to need. So use your NASTF resource, and that information can also be found in your quick links on your IM tools. So with that, I am done with my part of the presentation. If we have any questions, we'll be happy to take those. Again, make sure that you go and look at those handouts that are built into the webinar, and leave us your information, leave us your comments, your questions, and what kind of content you would love to see on the next presentation. Make sure that you are signing up for our e-blasts, and that way you can see all the webinars that Autel is coming up with. So Mike, what kind of questions do you have for me?
You bet. And Chad, one more on what you just said. There will be a survey pop up as we end this, folks. And one of the questions on there is a space for you to give us suggestions and ideas for some of these future webinars. One point that some folks asked about, Chad, was trying to find a list of IM 608 coverage or support, checking for VW and Audi vehicles. So if you could kind of address a way they might be able to find out a little bit of that information from us.
Absolutely. So you have two options for that. On the tool itself, if you slide the screen to the left, you will see an icon that says function list. On that function list icon, you can go through and select your vehicle, and it will give you the coverage information and what you can do on those vehicles. So it will tell you if you can add a key, if you can remove all keys, if you can do all keys lost. All that information is going to be directly there in the function list. That same information can be found on the autel.com website. If you go to autel.com, select support from the top and select vehicle coverage, that information will be right there on the website that you can go via manufacturer to find that information on all the different vehicles and coverage. If you have a customer that says, hey, you can go there for all the key coverage, but also you can go there for all the diagnostic coverage for your other tools. Those are two great resources to use.
There were a couple of questions, Chad, regarding the APB 112, which I don't know that we covered a lot of on this. Can you speak about that just for a minute?
Absolutely. So we have two accessories. One is called an G-Box 2, and the other one is the APB 112. So the APB 112, that is a key emulator. That gives us the ability, remember that Toyota that we were talking about, where we were, sorry, doing too many things at one time. Remember the Toyota we were talking about where we had to have a master key and we no longer had one? The key emulator gives us the ability to update that master key if we have lost it or forgot it or cleared all the keys out before we did that. So that is an emulator that emulates a key to be able to use on mainly the Toyota and some Subarus. It's basically an H key chip. So that gives us the ability to do that. The other one is the G-Box 2. And the G-Box 2 is a breakout box that gives us the ability to do faster pin reads on vehicles like that Mercedes and vehicles like BMW. It gives us the ability to take that process from a 45-minute to an hour process down to maybe a 15-minute or 20-minute process. And I'm working right now to grab that screenshot to bring that to you. All right, so this is a sell sheet, and Mike, if you have this one, if you could add it to the handouts list, that would be a great thing to do. I apologize for missing that one. But this gives us the definition information about the XP400, the G-Box, and the APB 112. So the APB 112 is our smart key emulator. It works with both tools, IM508 and IM608. And it gives us the ability to do the 4D chips, the 46 chips, Toyota H chips, and Hyundai 46 chips. So we're adding more and more to that. So that is the emulator. And then you see the picture of the G-Box that gives us the ability to do in-circuit and out-of-circuit on Mercedes and BMW.
One other last one, Chad, a few asked there. Does this tool require tokens or paid updates? And to kind of go with that, there was also one asking about how updates are done.
Okay, so as far as tokens go, we do not use any tokens. So this is an unlimited use tool on 99.5% of the cars. You can use this as many times as you want to. No tokens are required. The only one right now that has a pay-per-use service is Volkswagen MQB. That is the only one that costs anything to use each time, and that is paid via PayPal. Everything else is completely free, so you can use that as many times as you want to. As far as the updates go, it's just like every other Autel tool. It is, when the time of purchase, you get 12 months of updates and 12 months of warranty. Whenever that update expires, you can purchase an update from your local vendor and get 12 more months of updates and 12 more months of warranty. Now, the key tools and the key programming side of the tool is heavily reliant on a Wi-Fi connection on some vehicles. If your tool expires and you are not current on your update contract, you will lose that advanced functionality. So it's highly recommended to keep that all current and always have your update going so you don't lose any of that functionality. On the IM508, your update cost is $350, and the IM608, your update cost is $895.
Alrighty, and I do see lots of other questions. You guys have been great about questions throughout, but in the interest of time, we can't really sit and go through it all. Chad, myself, and of course, we want to thank our silent panelists out there, the mad programmer, Matt Skundridge. We'll go through some of those. We get a report afterwards from this, and we'll go ahead and try to get those answers out to all of you. I definitely want to thank everybody for attending, and thank you, Chad, for the presentation. When you leave today's webinar, as I mentioned, there'll be a survey on the presentation and feedback. We'll try and also get you a follow-up email in 24 to 48 hours that includes where you can view the recording of today's webinar, so you'll be able to get hold of that. Don't forget, next week, our webinar on Thursday is going to be on the TPMS Autel Total Solution, both the tools and sensors. We'll have John Amato, who is our technical trainer for our TPMS division, presenting that one. That one will actually feature some live stuff on the car. On behalf of Autel, all our presenters and panelists today, I want to thank you for joining us, and you all have a great rest of your day and stay safe out there.
Thanks, everybody.